So right now, on this planet Earth, there are 7.4 billion people, right? 7.4 billion people. They're longing for something. They're longing for change. Some are oppressed. Some are just damaged inside. Everyone wants something. And everyone in here, I am so sure, wants to change the world in their own little way. And that's why we're here. And something I want to share with you is that all it takes is 15 minutes a day. And the question that should be posed is, why do you learn languages? And so this is a disclaimer. Somebody just told me this morning, what is your talk about? Is it about, getting as many dates as possible? Unfortunately, it's not. If you want to do dates, I think you should go talk to Luca or someone like that. But today, we're going to be discussing the different types of love and how we can use our skills as polyglots to empower others and to bring some good to the world so that it's not just about ourselves. So something Alex Rawlings said last year in Greece, in Thessaloniki, is that it's not about how many languages you speak, but how much you love them. And when I heard that quote has stuck with me. And it's true. But I'd like to add to that. What about the people that speak the languages? Do we think about them enough? Everyone believes, eats and dances differently. And are we willing to take the time to enjoy that with them? Are we willing to ask how they do things, why they live the way they do? And maybe you're saying, well, I'm only one of 400 people at this conference. I'm one per polyglot in my community. Who am I? What can I do? And this is where all these things come in. So my name is Fiel Sahir. I am a classical guitarist currently living in Germany. And I am the author behind BetweenThreeWorlds.com. And just for coming, you will actually be getting your free PDF to help you have better conversations with anyone at the end of this talk. All you have to do is just come up here and talk to me. And so, growing up, I've been bullied. I have been racially harassed. I have been jumped, and I was almost a victim of hate crime in Indonesia. And as you guessed it, it's because of the color of my skin. And this happened in Indonesia and in the States. But instead of living with that bitterness and just seeing people from X ethnic group and saying, oh, I hate them because they follow this religion or because they're this, and this, that's too easy. It's too easy to hate. It's too easy to hate. And especially today with what's going on, the different presidents and rulers in the world, it's so easy to get upset. But instead, let's turn around our passion and use it to empower people and love people. And so maybe you're wondering, well, I thought love was just something as simple as having a partner or whoever that might be. If you know your Greek, there's actually 4 main words for love that the Greeks used to use back in the day. So there would be agape, which is divine love, storge, parental love, phileo, which is friendship love, and eros, which is romantic. And all 4 of these are very, very important, but it seems that in society today, we only focus on one and expect that one source to give all the other ones, which, as you can imagine, is impossible. I was born in Portland, Oregon, to 2 Indonesian parents, and it was not easy. And as I've mentioned in my Understanding Asian Cultures and Origins talk yesterday, and in my Indonesian 101 talk, it was difficult. And being an American didn't mean I was actually an American. I was not the right skin color, and when I was in Asia, I wasn't the right mannerism, I didn't have the right manners, and so that caused me to shut down. And as I mentioned yesterday as well, I had something called selective mutism, which means that whenever people I weren't comfortable with were around, I would shut down and I wouldn't speak to them. I would run away into the other direction and just kind of sit by myself. And it's weird, but kids go through this, especially when they go to school. So you can imagine how difficult it was for me to accept my culture. But that's where we get to step number 1, which is forget your comfort zone. You've heard this millions of times, but what does that look like as a language learner? What does that look like as someone who is a lover of culture and a lover of this world? Each and every one of us lives here. I mean, you're standing in front of me right now. And we have the opportunity to go and reach out. And so this is Indonesia, right? We have 700 different languages. We have 300 plus different ethnic groups. And it's just insane how many people there are, how many different cultures, even though most of them are Muslim. There's so many things that could go wrong. The more people you have, the more different opinions, things could go wrong. But when you're willing to step out of that, beauty happens. And so this was me in Indonesia. I was a very frustrated kid. I'm the one with that face. I was not happy. Being in Indonesia, again, I didn't speak Indonesian until I was 13, when I was already in the States for a good 3 years. And I got made fun of for speaking English. I couldn't speak Indonesian at that point. And when I went to an international school, they made fun of my English, saying my accent was funny, despite being American, which is very ironic. So I've discovered that life could be so much better if I wanted to learn languages and forget my comfort zone, even at a young age. And this happened because I was with some relatives and family friends and my parents, and we were coming home from a family vacation to Seaside, Oregon. And on that car ride, they were speaking Indonesian the whole way, and I couldn't understand anything. And obviously, I was very frustrated and confused. And when you're a child, 1 minute is a long time. Are we there yet is the question of the day. And I just kept asking my dad, what's going on? And he tried to translate, but every time he did, there was another joke. And then again, and then again, and so we just gave up. But that's when I resolved that I would learn Indonesian, to understand the humor so I could connect with people. And how has that changed my life? It's changed my life so much that I have decided to embrace it completely, as I've mentioned. This is a picture of me and my family, and this is Indonesian traditional clothing. But it's done much more than that. It's allowed me to love my cousins. It's allowed me to speak with my relatives. And I have relatives that I get to see pretty often because they come to Europe for business. And instead of speaking English to them, and them speaking back to me in broken English, and having them adjust to me, instead I've adjusted to them. And even though my Indonesian is at a high level, it's not perfect. It's not 100%. I'm not 100% Indonesian. Because I don't know all the food names. I haven't lived in all of the places that they have. I haven't walked their shoes. But speaking that language has allowed me to speak with these kids. That's me over there. That was a while ago. But language is so powerful. How many of you speak, if you're an immigrant, how many of you speak that language from home? Yeah. So, and you see how much it's helped you, or kind of not helped you at times too, getting you in trouble. But it's so important. It changes the way you think. It changes the way you react. Also, for instance, last year I had a snap moment. And I was in Morocco on this random tour bus with 3 Spaniards, 4 Chinese kids, and 2 Moroccan French speakers. And none of them spoke the other's language. And the 2 Moroccans didn't speak English, so who stepped up to the plate and played translator? But that's something that we have sort of a responsibility to do every day. And it's fun. It's really fun. And that's when I realized that's what it means to be between 3 worlds. And that's the name of my blog. It's when you go in between, you connect. You are the connector. You are an ambassador. And we'll get to that a bit more. So again, rule number 1 is forget your comfort zone, whatever that might be, whether that might be speaking just English, whether that might be speaking the languages you want to speak. And it's not easy to just love everything, but it's a process. And so the next one is make time. Making time is so important. Loving out loud, this is really important. So loving out loud doesn't mean loving those who deserve it. It means loving everyone else. Loving out loud doesn't mean loving those who deserve it. It means loving everyone else. And think about what that means for you right now in your head. Like, think of those people, maybe that coworker that just pisses you off every time you see their face, or that person that's just really weird. And we all have those people in our lives. But the thing is, they are just as worthy and as needy of love as we are. And once we're able to give it, we will receive it as well. And so this picture is a place that we called The Nest. And in college, there were these 4 guys that rented out an apartment, a huge apartment with a huge living room. And they made sure that this place was an so-called safe space where people could be themselves, whatever they were going through. They opened their apartment and had food, had video games, had cards, potlucks once a week, just things that people don't really do. We don't talk to our neighbor. And they even had homeless people over once or twice. And I was a definite frequent visitor because I was going through a lot. And these guys showed me what it means to love people. And they were all Christians, but people that came were from all different walks of life, no matter what they believed and what they did. What we realized is that It's about having time and making time for others and showing them that they are important. And so the nest was a safe haven for people, including myself. And that's where I went. And is there a place that you have community outside of this place in Bratislava or any other polyglot place? Think about that. Maybe you have polyglot meetups. Maybe you have, there are polyglot meetups around the world in New York City or in Taiwan. There's big clubs, right? But maybe, what if we thought a bit less about polyglots? Maybe what if we thought more about people that want to learn languages but aren't sure how? This is where we make time. Think about the people. Again, loving out loud doesn't mean loving those who deserve it. It means loving everyone else. So, in addition to that, one of the founders of the Nest, he made this statement that's in the ebook. And so, people go through life constantly receiving messages saying, you aren't worth listening to, or no one actually cares, and other similar lies. Skipping that sentence, by talking to them, you take a stand for them against their own self-doubt. Loving out loud is listening and conversing in ways that speak louder than the voices that oppress. And how many are those voices in our heads that tell us, you can't do this, you're not worth my time, you're not worth it? Maybe it's the people in your restaurant. Maybe you can use this opportunity, since you love languages. I'm not suggesting that you go out and get a whole book and learn a dictionary. Just go to Polyglot. Talk to your waiter. Maybe, I've said this yesterday, if you live in Germany, go to your donor place and speak in Turkish. Just say a phrase or two. They'll love it. It works charms. And so when I was a kid, my father, he doesn't speak any Chinese or Spanish, but he would always try and just to make them smile. And there was this one particular restaurant, and Chinese, for some reason, are notorious for just doing business. They just want you to get in and get out, right? But there was this one restaurant we went to, and he would always try to speak to them with the little Chinese he knew. And for some reason, after a while, this woman remembered our order 2 years after not going there, because we moved to New York, came back for a visit. And she said, okay, you want the hot and sour soup and then the noodles? And we're like, yes. How did you remember? She said, well, because you talked to me. You realize that I'm worth your time. I'm not just a server. That's something we have to remember is they're people as well. They just happen to be serving you at that time. But my dad would include them in the dinner table. And how did he do that? He did magic tricks. And we often had guests, which is why we were at this restaurant. And he would tell them this. They would sit there and just stand because they're supposed to be working, but this is too interesting to pay attention to all the guests. And eventually we'd invite them to the table, and they would become essentially family. So last year, in March, I was in Köthen, a tiny town in Germany, where Bach was, on the way to Leipzig. And we missed the train by a minute because my friend took a shower for too long, which was very frustrating because I had to wait another hour for the next one. And we did, but there was a reason. There was this Afghan guy that was standing on the platform. He turned to us and said, hey, can you help me bring this gentleman to his destination? And we were confused, and he said, sure. Showed us the ticket. We were taking the exact same trains, including the connection. And we said, okay, great. And instead of just leaving it at that and saying we'll bring him, I said, where are you from? He said, Afghanistan. I was like, okay. Does this older gentleman speak English or German? Neither. We're like, crap. So I spent a good 15 minutes on the train ignoring him, and he sat on the other side. But I said, this isn't right. This isn't right. This isn't right. There's got to be more to that. But then I had a savior called Polyglot, right? We all have internet. We're here, so obviously we are connected very well. And so I just Googled a few Farsi phrases and read them to him and introduced myself. And the face that he had just lit up. And he kept on speaking Farsi to me. And I don't understand. All I can say is, salam and merci, right? And the poor guy, he felt so obligated to give me something. He took out almonds from his bag and just threw them at us. And we took it sheepishly because, we were there just to help him. But he asked us to help replace his SD card, and this was all through sign language, okay? And I would say one sentence in Farsi, meaning like thank you, and he would go a paragraph, and I would just go, yeah, dost means friend, okay. So it seems really like, why would you do that? But that's what loving out loud is, taking the opportunities to talk to foreign people, talk to people that are there. So again, Forget your comfort zones and make time, however that means, wherever you live. I don't know where you live. We can talk about this later. If you have some ideas you're not sure how to go about, but I think this is definitely something really important that we can do as language lovers and people of culture. Another thing you can do is ask questions. Asking questions with a listening ear. Because if you don't listen, then it's not a monologue. Nobody wants a monologue. Everyone wants to be heard. And if you're there as someone that is to be a servant loving someone, that means you need to step back and let your ego go for a little bit. There's a quote, asking questions. It wasn't like that earlier. Okay, so ignore the space. Asking questions causes people to open up in their general assumptions. Asking questions ensures a conversation. Asking questions always makes people think. And that's really important. Now, his profession is a bit more in that side of getting people to talk, but this speaks a lot, because when you ask questions, people will open up, but not about the weather. Forget the weather. Do something else. Do something else. Or if you're Asian, ask them about their salary. Just kidding. Yeah. If you were at my talk yesterday, you know why. They just go straight for it. But asking questions causes people to open up in their general assumptions. Maybe you don't like Trump, right? But doesn't mean you can't have a conversation cannot have a conversation with a Trumper. Maybe they'll yell at you, but that's okay. That's okay. You did your part. You did your part. Or maybe there's a conflict between your country and another country. Maybe Indonesia is fighting with East Timor or vice versa. Instead of just saying, oh, you were part of us one day, learn some Portuguese. There's so much to it. And why do I say that? It's because each and every one of us that is here is essentially a walking UN, right? Each and every one of us is a walking United Nations. And why do I say that? Because each and every one of us represents someone or something. We represent who we are. No matter where we are, where we're from, we represent something. Whether, me as an American, I represent Indonesia, even though I'm not technically from there. I represent the States, and everyone asks me how much I love Trump and how many guns I have, but that's besides the point. But you represent something, and so you have the chance to make an impression and break the stereotype. And I definitely do that. Like I said in the bio, like I don't drive and I wear glasses, you know. But each and every one of us has a responsibility in this sense. And so, who has heard of Dr. Richard Benton? He's behind the Love Language blog, and he did a talk at the Polyglot conference in New York 2 years ago. And what he said is, when you learn other people's languages, when you take the time to hang out with them, you give them dignity. And so this guy, he's learning Oromo, and he speaks Somali, and when people ask him why, he says, because I live in Minnesota. And so it's reversing the paradigm of learning languages for our own gain. But it's definitely not easy. But let's say you want to just talk to people. These are always questions you can use even if you don't speak their language. You seem really interesting. What's your story? That's much better than, how are you? What do you do, right? These are so much better. And if you can get these in the PDF in much greater detail as well as in the blog. That's an interesting opinion. What makes you say that? Maybe someone likes their guns. Ask them why. Other than just assuming that it's because of self-defense and he likes hunting. Maybe he has a different reason. Something someone else said is, don't listen to what people say, but why they say it. There's always a reason. If you guys watch anime of any sort, there's always the flashback stories, right? They always explain what happened and why this person is so bitter or so cold. Think about that when you meet one another person. They always have a backstory. But number 4, this is really important, is be contagious. If you just keep things to yourself, what good is it? Right? So, number 1, get out of your comfort zone. Number 2, make time. Number 3, ask questions. Number 4, be contagious. So be like the Irish. This was taken in Galway, and this is how I felt after a few days there. I was just so happy to be there, and they were happy to see me. They were like, oh, you're from America, this is great. How long are you staying? 3 days? Not enough. You need to stay longer. They wanted me there. And so do random things that will cause you to meet people, that will cause you to get noticed. So for instance, if you saw me wearing my hat yesterday, it's a conversation starter. I don't tell people it's a hat. This is also from Benny Lewis. It's a great technique that he uses. As you know, he used earplugs at concerts to start conversations. Some people think that's weird, but it works. Another thing you can do is foreign clothes Fridays, is what I did in college with my friends. And so this guy's from India, this guy's from Estonia, and this guy's from Mexico. And what do we have in common other than we studied music? We love culture. Every one of us represents someone or something. And so every Friday we would dress up in traditional clothing, and after a while we realized that we were wearing the same clothes over and over again. But that was okay. It's okay. Don't be afraid, because fear is a punk. That's by Bob Goff. And or maybe you're thinking, I don't want to do clothes or something, but maybe there's something that's missing in your life. Who is someone that you can guide? Think of that little nephew or that little cousin or someone that you know that could appreciate someone giving them advice. I know that I never grew up with someone above me to tell me what to do, how to grow up, what it meant to be an Asian American, what it means to be a musician, whatever. There are so many young people that need guidance. And most of us here are adults. I think we all are, actually. Yeah, so what does that mean? Instead of just keeping it to ourselves, we can share that with someone. How much more meaning would life have if we could be someone's hero, if we could love those that need it? So essentially, just be contagious. Be like Mr. Burdick. This was Halloween, and he said, I'm dressed up as a Northeastern University undergrad student. And yes, he had beer in that. And those are animal crackers. And so be like him. Share what you have. Be contagious. Be contagious. And how are we going to do that as polyglots? You can mentor. You can open up your house to people. Share your life story. Share what you do. No matter what walk of life you are special. You have something. That's why you're here. Because you have a job that probably supports you and allows you to have this hobby. Right? Everyone is good at something. And if you're not, talk to me. I'll figure it out. I'll find out what you're good at. Another way we can get involved is share our culture, our polyglot culture, and our nerdy selves with each other. And we can do that through Wikitongues. Who's watched Wikitongue videos before in here? Yeah, I am so addicted to them. I will just sit and listen to all the languages I don't speak, because that is totally fruitful to my life. And so Wikitongues, I just became a volunteer with them, and what they do is they record people speaking different languages from across the world for 2-3 minutes, however long you feel like. And if you feel like contributing to that project, I have a camera and a tripod with me, and we can get that started. Unfortunately, after this, I'm going to the castle trip, so we may have to do it tomorrow or Sunday, but do come find me if you speak an interesting language, or even if you don't, and you just want to share a little bit. We'd love to have you recorded. So again, love your neighbor. Loving out loud doesn't mean loving those who deserve it. It means loving everyone else. And that is so difficult, right? Loving your enemies, what is that? How does that benefit me? But it starts just by having a conversation. And instead of reminding yourself how much you hate the person every day, tell yourself, he's human. Maybe he's gone through something that I haven't gone through. Maybe he's had a tough childhood. You don't know if his parents passed away when he was young. You don't know what he's gone through. So have a conversation. Give someone a phone call today. Tell them how much they mean to you. Volunteer. There's so many things you can do. Go to Africa, like I happened to in 2009, and visit a random village. I got duped because I applied to go to the French immersion program, and they said, we'll send you to Africa, Senegal. But it worked. It changed my life. And it just changed everything and led me to stuff like this, loving out loud through conversation. So this is the free PDF that will help you get started in all your conversation needs. I don't know if you struggle with social anxiety. I know that I have it whenever I speak a foreign language. I always mess up, even in English. When I'm trying to order something like, give me a Big Mac, I'll mess it up. Yeah, and so loving out loud is bridging the gap. And so in order to love people, you need to converse with them. You need to listen to them as well. And everything that you need is in this PDF. But I'm also currently working on something called How to Love Out Loud, Redefining Love in 40 Days, in which I go further and give you 40 things to do across 40 days to help you discover yourself a bit more and to love those around you. So instead of trying to figure things out by yourself, like as a polyglot, self-study is hard. Sometimes you need that textbook, right? Sometimes you need that guidance. So this will be that for you. And so we'll take this time to have any more questions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and see how you can do it wherever you live. Thank you. So, anyone have any questions, ideas, arguments against this? Protests?
You and I talked yesterday a little bit, and one of the things that I find that really makes me feel good and where I'm using my languages is I do a lot of volunteer work with refugees, asylum seekers, people who are running nonprofits and need to, I like fundraising, so I help them with their messaging and their fundraising, and very often I can strengthen what I'm doing for the organization by using language skills, and I learn a lot of great new words and they get help. So it's a thing that feels particularly good to me. I think I've devoted maybe like the last 30 years of my life to doing stuff like that.
So talking with her yesterday, she's American and she moved to Bratislava, how many years ago?
Well, I was here for 6 years during the 90s, and I came back in January.
She came back because she loved it so much. She realized the value. So it's actually 2 for 1. Everyone wins. You help these people get their asylum or whatever it is, and you learn vocabulary if you so choose to learn their language. There's someone I know, she's a Mexican lady, and there's this Romanian family in Düsseldorf where I live, and she's always helping them out with something, whether it be going to a doctor or whatever, paying their bills. And sometimes they don't pay their bills and she has to end up doing it for them. But she feels that that is worth her time. And so maybe you have something like that you're thinking about. I'm giving a lot of food for thought, so I understand if there's no comments just yet. But keep that in mind. Yeah.
Thank you, Fiel. That's a great presentation. It sounds like there are kind of 2 different sides to this. There's the, something happens in your life and you have the opportunity to step forward and help someone and reach out to that person, like your experience with the Afghani guy. And then the other side of it is being more proactive and trying to say, here's what I'm doing with my life, here's me moving forward to actively in my daily life or in my weekly life do something. And for some people that might be volunteering or it might be a career change, but that might not always be the easiest means for people to make that proactive choice. What are some ways, particularly, here since it's a polyglot thing, what are some ways that you would recommend people look into to try and make that change in their lives so they can more directly love out loud, on an active daily basis or weekly basis or something?
Okay. So how many people go on social media here in this room? Like everyone, right? And how many names do you see a day? Like 50 plus, right? And there's always that one person you've been thinking about, how are you doing? It's been so long since we've talked, but then you never send them a message. You just go off and do whatever else you were doing before. So something I've learned is to act on your thoughts. And something as simple as just sending a message or even calling them on a random day, but especially on their birthday, always works a charm. Because it gives you a reason, so you can have an excuse to call that person instead of being like, oh, this is awkward, I don't know what to say, right? But I totally understand the sentiment. So starting with a phone call, sending them a postcard, writing them a letter, a message, even if it doesn't go anywhere, you're building a relationship. Relationships are like plants, you gotta water them, but it doesn't, the thing is about relationships, they don't just die like plants do sometimes. So that's the good thing. So that's where I would get started. Just send someone a message today. Just tell them, hey, I loved your talk, or what you said last time we met really resonated with me. Because we all have those thoughts and we're all thankful to people, but we don't have enough, I want to say humility, but that's a bit strong, to tell the person how you're feeling and how they made you feel. So if we're willing to let that go for a second and just tell them what we think, it'll change a lot. There's one back there. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. My bad.
Hi, my name is Cecilia. I go to a university in the United States that has 15% international students. It's mostly Chinese students. And unfortunately, we're a very progressive town, surrounded by a bunch of very rural, very conservative, and somewhat hateful. I mean, I don't want to be like all conservative rural people are hateful, but there are a lot of people. So as an Asian American, what are your thoughts on the best way to combat maltreatment of our international students? Particularly, there is a language barrier for a lot of them where they're not completely fluent in English. So what are your thoughts on this situation and what one can do?
That's a really, really good question, because I was actually part of that reason when I was in college. I didn't understand my fellow Asians, so I was like, why can't they speak English? You know, what's their problem? And it was just weird, right? But as somebody pointed out to me yesterday, it's because you can say face in language as well. I didn't realize that you have to also maintain, like I knew they didn't like making mistakes, but I didn't realize that it's because of that cultural barrier where you're not allowed to because then you look bad in front of everyone, right? So, man, that's what I've been thinking about, but I haven't lived in the States for a year and a half now. I would recommend learning a little bit of their language. They might be a bit suspicious. It's just Asians can be very suspicious of people, but I don't know why. But they also love foreigners. So the thing is, they want to talk to you, but they're afraid that you're gonna like laugh at them. So I don't know if this is true in your school, but in my school, the Chinese and the Koreans talk to each other, and not to us. And we're like, but we're we live here. Talk to us, you know. But so I would just start asking them about their culture a little bit, or going on Wikipedia. So something I like to do is I always love to know one fact and let them carry the conversation, right? So, for instance, something I talk about in the PDF is whenever I meet Indians, it doesn't matter where they're from, I'll say Punjab, even though they're not from Punjab. And you think that would be offensive, but they love it because they know that Punjab has Bhangra music, which is really popular in India, right? If there's from South India, then I'll say something from South India. And the fact that I know that one thing, it just makes them ecstatic because I'm not supposed to know that according to my face. So surprise them. Just, yeah, that would be my advice. Let's talk after. Yeah. Oh, there's a question here.
That's more of a comment than a question. I would say it like comments to the last two questions. As an Asian who studied in liberal arts college in upstate New York, I'd say I have some thoughts over this. The first thing is about like how to do something as a polyglot or as a person. Well, in my opinion, I think like nowadays we have so many conflicts because a lot of people just don't have healthy common sense. I mean, in a lot of ways. It's like you love people, you don't need religion, you don't need no reason. I mean, you're not born to hate people, you're born to love people. So like, why do we hate each other? And we spend a lot of time like arguing the differences and stuff like that. But then we realize that even between chimpanzees and people, we share like 98% of similar genes. Not to mention like in between just like different races of people, it doesn't really matter. And while I am on social media, I don't tend to use social media that much, but I agree with you, you can do a lot with it. You can send people a message telling them how important they are to you, how you like them, how you love them. But also I feel like by spending a lot of time on social media nowadays, we tend to ignore people who are actually around you. Like, because for me, well, I was born and raised in China and then went to the United States for college. And then I, went to study in Germany, lived in Germany for a while, lived in Russia for a while, lived in Turkey for a while. So my friends and my closest people are never really around me. So instead of being in Germany, Skyping with my friends in China, being in Russia, talking to my friends in Berlin, I just spend time with the people around me and tell them how amazing they are. Because a lot of your neighbors are doing interesting stuff, why don't you just go ahead and just ask them what they're doing and let them tell you a story. As you said, I think that's very, very powerful thing. I mean, we're living in a world now in which a lot of the cultures would consider that to be creepy when you go to like random people and just say something. But I guess it doesn't really matter what you say. What really matters is how you say it. You can compliment a person in a totally creepy way with all your different intentions, but you can also compliment a person in a very loving way. You'd say like, I really think your hair is cool, like, and then you can start all the conversations, skipping all the small talk. I mean, I hate small talks. So like asking people things that they matter, like, what kind of change do you think you're bringing to the world? What is the one thing you want to do before you die? Those kind of things. Yeah. And then you start to actually connect with people. And on the second note, in terms of the Asian community, that's one thing that I never understand. I mean, I don't identify myself with anyone, with any culture. Because for me, whatever makes sense, I take it as a part of me. Whatever opinion that makes sense, I think it's cool, then, well, I agree with it. That's it. And I don't hang out with a specific person because he's from a specific race, he's from a specific background, he speaks a specific language. If there is a good enough reason, we connect. And I think with Asians, with other people, the same. Maybe they're more afraid because, well, as you've said, they don't speak the language fluently, or they're kind of feeling homesick or whatever reason. But I don't even think that you have to be very culturally sensitive to know that, whether they're up to like what their culture is about. Just sit down and just like talk to them. Hey, like, what do you do in your life? What do you want to do in the next 5 years? All this stuff. They're universal questions, because most people are going to, you know, go through the next 5 years doing something, right? So I don't think it's that complicated. You just go ahead and just talk to them, embrace them, and just like anyone else, right?
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, totally. Let me respond to that before I get to you. So I totally agree with that. So as a New Yorker, we don't talk to anyone. You can start a fight by staring at someone on the subway for too long. That's just how we are. We like to get from point A to point B. In Germany, they're kind of the same way, but they're not aggressive. But what I've noticed is that once you break that shell, once you actually go and talk to them, then suddenly the floodgates open, and you're like, oh crap, they're talking too much. So that's the thing, is a secret that we humans carry, is that we're actually longing for this so much, but we're not willing to let our guards down to let it happen. And so maybe you can be that for someone else. I know that is definitely true. I know there was a homeless lady sitting next to me on the train earlier in March and I started talking to her, and everyone else was looking at me like, what you doing? You were disturbing the train, you know, like you're ruining the vibe. Like it's kind of taboo to talk on the train in a sense. But so what? You know, like I would break that, and I totally agree we should talk more afterwards. Yeah.
Your idealism is contagious. Mm-hmm. Your optimism is infectious. I would take everything that you said and what's been said in this room, print it out on a page, and sign at the bottom as a binding contract. So far I've really enjoyed your talk. You did mention at some point that you were a victim of a hate crime, and in the world that we're living in, where there seems to be more polarization, it makes what you're doing all the more noble. So it's out of genuine concern that I ask you not to put yourself in dangerous situations.
Yeah,
because haters are going to hate.
Yeah. No, thank you for your concern. It wasn't my choice. Yeah, I unfortunately cannot change my skin color. I know Michael Jackson did, but he's special. What happened was in 1998, in May, there were riots that broke out in Indonesia that I could not control. Luckily, we were not hurt, but they did come to our town. There were just mobs of people killing ethnic Chinese, and thank you. And the thing is, you know, if you're Chinese, that's one thing. If you're Chinese and Christian, which is often the case in Indonesia, that's 2 reasons to hate you. So that's why they went after us. And so even right now, actually, as we speak, riots are kind of bubbling. And so, yeah, you just attract it because of who you are. Whatever. I mean, you just live with it. And if I die, I die. You've heard the message, so it lives on. And you got the PDF. You just have to sign up for it. So, but thank you. No, I truly appreciate that. Yeah. There's a lot more stories that have come out of that. Anyone else? Yeah. Well, if you have any comments, I would love to talk to you. We have today, tomorrow, and Sunday to keep talking. Yeah. And we got the internet. You can find me on Facebook. And I do encourage you to come up here and just give me your email address so I can spam you. He's already received the PDF, so he knows it's legit. And so, again, my website is Between Three Worlds. I talk about having conversations with people no matter where they're from, basically impressing people in 20 seconds. Or if you struggle with social anxiety, I have something for you. And maybe sometimes the reason we don't talk to people is we're not really sure how to. And I totally understand that. Again, I had selective mutism as a kid, so I didn't talk to anyone at all. So you can imagine. But thank you so much for coming, and I love to hear your ideas.